The Art of Controversy by Arthur Schopenhauer quotes, "The Art of Controversy by Arthur Schopenhauer is a philosophical exploration of the methods and strategies employed in debates and arguments, focusing more on winning than on truth." Schopenhauer humorously outlines a series of dialectical tactics and rhetorical tricks that individuals often use, consciously or unconsciously, to gain the upper hand in disputes. This work delves into the psychological aspects of human conversation, emphasizing how victory, rather than the pursuit of truth, often motivates people in intellectual discourse. Schopenhauer's observations offer a critique of human nature, showing how debates can easily become competitions of wit and manipulation rather than sincere efforts to discover the truth. Quote 1. "Controversial dialectic is the art of disputing, and of disputing in such a way as to hold one's own, whether one is in the right or the wrong, per face et nefas." Schopenhauer articulates the essence of controversial dialectic, which is a form of argument focused not on finding the truth, but on winning the argument, irrespective of the correctness of the position one holds. This reflects a pragmatic, often adversarial view of debate, where the goal is victory rather than truth, highlighting a more strategic than philosophical approach to discourse. Quote 2. "If human nature were not base, but thoroughly honorable, we should in every debate have no other aim than the discovery of truth." This quote suggests an ideal state, where debates and discussions are purely aimed at uncovering truth, contrasting sharply with the reality Schopenhauer describes, where human nature's baseness leads to arguments focused on personal victory rather than collective enlightenment. This pessimistic view of human intentions in debate underscores the influence of personal biases and ego over objective reasoning. Quote 3. "A man may be objectively in the right, and nevertheless in the eyes of bystanders, and sometimes in his own, he may come off worst." Here, Schopenhauer highlights the disconnect that can occur between being correct and appearing to be correct. This reflects the complexities of rhetoric, where the strength of an argument can be overshadowed by the skill in presenting it. Thus, the person who argues more persuasively might be seen as right, even if they are factually incorrect. Quote 4. "The interest in truth, which may be presumed to have been their only motive when they stated the proposition alleged to be true, now gives way to the interests of vanity. And so, for the sake of vanity, what is true must seem false, and what is false must seem true." This quote delves into the psychological shift that occurs when debaters prioritize winning over truth. Schopenhauer suggests that once vanity enters the equation, the original intent to seek truth is often compromised, leading to a distortion of facts to maintain one's perceived superiority in the argument. Quote 5. "We must always keep the subject of one branch of knowledge quite distinct from that of any other." Schopenhauer emphasizes the importance of maintaining clear distinctions between different fields of knowledge, such as between dialectic and logic. By keeping these domains separate, each can be more effectively understood and applied, especially in the context of arguments where the goals of winning and seeking truth might conflict. Quote 6. "The modes are 1. Ad rem, 2. Ad hominem, or ex concessis. That is to say, we may show either that the proposition is not in accordance with the nature of things, i.e., with absolute objective truth, or that it is inconsistent with other statements or admissions of our opponent, i.e., with truth as it appears to him." Schopenhauer explains the two fundamental approaches in a debate: challenging the truth of a proposition based on its inconsistency with reality, ad rem, or its contradiction with the opponent's other beliefs, ad hominem. This distinction underpins strategic debate techniques, focusing either on universal truths or on individual belief systems, tailored to undermine an opponent's argument effectively. Quote 7. "The direct refutation makes use either of the diversion or of the instance." Here, Schopenhauer outlines two primary strategies of direct refutation in arguments: the diversion and the instance. The diversion involves accepting an opponent's premise and demonstrating its implausibility by deriving an absurd conclusion from it, thereby undermining the original premise. The instance, on the other hand, involves presenting specific counterexamples to a general proposition, proving it false by highlighting exceptions. Quote 8. We cannot argue with those who deny principles. Contra negantem principia non est disputandum. This quote emphasizes the foundational requirement for any productive debate: agreement on basic principles. Schopenhauer notes that without a shared basis for discussion, no argument can progress, as it becomes impossible to engage meaningfully with someone who rejects these foundational principles. This underscores the importance of establishing common ground before engaging in deeper discourse. Quote 9. The extension. This consists in carrying your opponent's proposition beyond its natural limits, in giving it as general a signification and as wide a sense as possible, so as to exaggerate it, and, on the other hand, in giving your own proposition as restricted a sense and as narrow limits as you can, because the more general a statement becomes, the more numerous are the objections to which it is open. Schopenhauer describes a debate strategy called the extension, where one exaggerates the opponent's argument to make it seem unreasonable while narrowly construing one's own to shield it from criticism. This tactic leverages the difficulty in defending broad claims and the ease of defending more narrowly defined positions, illustrating a common method in argumentation to manipulate the scope of statements to one's advantage. Quote 10. The homonymy. This trick is to extend a proposition to something which has little or nothing in common with the matter in question, but the similarity of the word, then to refute it triumphantly, and so claim credit for having refuted the original statement. Here, Schopenhauer points out a tactic where debaters misuse the ambiguity of language to argue against something fundamentally different from the original issue under discussion. This misuse of language leads to the appearance of a refutation when in fact the core issue has not been addressed. This highlights the importance of precise language in discourse to avoid misunderstandings or deliberate misdirection. Quote 11. Another trick is to take a proposition which is laid down relatively, and in reference to some particular matter, as though it were uttered with a general or absolute application, or at least to take it in some quite different sense, and then refute it. This quote details how debaters often manipulate the context of a statement, pretending it was made with a universal application when it was not, to make it easier to attack. This strategy shows the critical need for clear context in discussions and how easily arguments can be derailed by shifting the ground on which they're based. Quote 12. With an induction, Greek apagage, a great number of particular instances are required in order to establish it as a universal proposition. But with the diversion, Greek apagogy, a single instance, to which the proposition does not apply, is all that is necessary to overthrow it. This quote explains a debating technique where a single contrary example can be used to challenge and potentially disprove a general statement, underscoring the fragility of broad generalizations in arguments. This method is particularly effective because it requires only one counterexample to question the validity of a universal claim, illustrating the critical need for precision in the formulation of statements. Quote 13. A brilliant move is the retorsio argumenti, or turning of the tables, by which your opponent's argument is turned against himself. Here, Schopenhauer highlights a strategy where an opponent's logic or principles are used against them, effectively using their own argumentative foundation to undermine their position. This tactic not only destabilizes the opponent's argument, but also forces them to reconsider the consistency and universality of their reasoning, leading to a potential strategic advantage in debate. Quote 14. Should your opponent surprise you by becoming particularly angry at an argument, you must urge it with all the more zeal, not only because it is a good thing to make him angry, but because it may be presumed that you have here put your finger on the weak side of his case, and that just here he is more open to attack than even for the moment you perceive. This tactic involves capitalizing on the emotional reactions of an opponent to press an argument further when it provokes anger, indicating a possible vulnerability. Schopenhauer suggests that such emotional responses might reveal the points where the opponent's argument is weakest and most susceptible to critique, thereby providing a strategic point of attack in the debate. Quote 15. The beauty of a work of art consists in the fact that it holds up a clear mirror to certain ideas inherent in the world in general. The beauty of a work of poetic art in particular is that it renders the ideas inherent in mankind, and thereby leads it to a knowledge of these ideas. Schopenhauer defines the essence of artistic beauty as the ability to reflect and express inherent ideas, capturing the universal or fundamental truths about the world or human nature. This articulation sets the framework for understanding how art transcends mere aesthetics by embedding deeper philosophical insights, aiming to enhance our understanding of human existence and the larger cosmos. Quote 16. On the other hand, we call drama, or descriptive poetry, interesting when it represents events and actions of a kind which necessarily arouse concern or sympathy, like that which we feel in real events involving our own person. This quote distinguishes between the beauty and interest in art, noting that while beauty appeals to the intellect and a sense of universality, interest appeals to the emotions and personal connections. Interest in a narrative is driven by the unfolding events that invoke personal concern or emotional engagement, much like one's involvement in real-life situations. This distinction highlights how different elements of a work can engage audiences on multiple levels, intellectual and emotional. Quote 17. It is obvious that what is affected by poetry of this character is our will, and not merely our intellectual powers, pure and simple. Here, Schopenhauer emphasizes that certain types of poetic works, particularly those that generate interest, impact the will or the desires and emotions of the audience, rather than just their intellectual understanding. This effect contrasts with the purely cognitive appreciation of beauty, suggesting that art can either move us emotionally and personally or engage us in a more detached, intellectual contemplation. Quote 18. We have now obtained a clear conception of the essential difference between the beauty and the interest of a work of art. The distinction Schopenhauer outlines between the beauty and interest of art serves as a critical analytical tool for evaluating art. Beauty engages the intellect and provides knowledge and insight, while interest impacts the will by involving the viewer's or reader's emotions and personal concerns. This separation enriches our appreciation of art's dual capacity to enlighten and entertain. Quote 19. But interest is prejudicial to beauty as soon as it oversteps this limit. And this is the case if we are so led away by the interest of a work that whenever we come to any detailed description in a novel or any lengthy reflection on the part of a character in a drama, we grow impatient and want to put spurs to our author so that we may follow the development of events with greater speed. Schopenhauer warns against the potential for interest to detract from the beauty of a work when it becomes the dominant aspect, causing impatience with slower, more contemplative parts of the narrative. This highlights the delicate balance needed in crafting a work of art, where the pull of an engaging plot must not overpower the aesthetic and reflective qualities that contribute to the work's deeper beauty and meaning. Quote 20. It is this that we call interest. It is the sympathy which the event in itself forces us to feel, and which, by riveting our attention, makes the mind obedient to the poet, and able to follow him into all the parts of his story. Schopenhauer discusses how interest generated by events within a narrative commands the audience's attention and guides them through the story. This engagement is crucial, as it ensures that the audience remains invested in the narrative, experiencing the journey as the author intended. Quote 21. Epic and dramatic writings, where beauty and interest are both present in a high degree, may be compared to the working of a watch, where interest is the spring which keeps all the wheels in motion. In epic and dramatic works, the interplay of beauty and interest can be likened to the mechanics of a watch, where interest drives the narrative forward like a mainspring drives the gears. This analogy highlights how both elements are necessary: interest to propel the narrative and beauty to give it depth and meaning. Quote 22. Therefore, it will be advantageous for every man to discover what powers he possesses and what powers he lacks. Let him, then, develop the powers in which he is preeminent and make a strong use of them. Let him pursue the path where they will avail him. And even though he has to conquer his inclinations, let him avoid the path where such powers are requisite, as he possesses only in a low degree. Schopenhauer advises individuals to focus on strengthening and utilizing their innate abilities while avoiding areas where they are weak. This approach maximizes personal effectiveness and satisfaction, fostering a life where one frequently experiences the pleasure of competence rather than the discomfort of inadequacy. Quote 23. As a child, one has no conception of the inexorable character of the laws of nature and of the stubborn way in which everything persists in remaining what it is. The child believes that even lifeless things are disposed to yield to it, perhaps because it feels itself one with nature, or, from mere unacquaintance with the world, believes that nature is disposed to be friendly. In this observation, Schopenhauer reflects on the naive perspective of a child who does not yet understand the unyielding nature of the physical world and its laws. This innocence leads children to believe they can influence the world around them in ways that are beyond actual human control, demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality that is gradually corrected with age and experience. Quote 24. It is just because all happiness is of a negative character that when we succeed in being perfectly at our ease, we are not properly conscious of it. Everything seems to pass us softly and gently, and hardly to touch us until the moment is over. And then it is the positive feeling of something lacking that tells us of the happiness which has vanished. Schopenhauer explores the transient and often unnoticed nature of happiness, suggesting that it is only in its absence that we truly recognize and value our moments of contentment. This notion emphasizes the elusive and retrospective nature of happiness, which often escapes our grasp and appreciation in real time. Quote 25. A man is wise only on condition of living in a world full of fools. This quote highlights Schopenhauer's somewhat cynical view on wisdom and its rarity. He suggests that wisdom stands out only in contrast to the foolishness that predominates in the world. This implies that a wise individual's insights and prudent decisions become more apparent and perhaps more necessary due to the prevailing lack of wisdom around them. Quote 26. When I think, it is the spirit of the world which is striving to express its thought. It is nature which is trying to know and fathom itself. Schopenhauer describes the act of thinking as an expression of the world's spirit, or nature's attempt to understand itself. This perspective assigns a profound, almost mystical quality to human cognition, elevating personal thoughts to the level of universal significance, where individual insights contribute to the collective understanding of nature. Quote 27. There alone, in the human brain, has it any being. Unless you understand this, you can go no further. This statement underscores Schopenhauer's philosophical idealism, which posits that the reality we perceive, including the physical world, exists primarily in our minds. He stresses that true understanding hinges on recognizing that our perceptions of the world are brain-based constructs. This insight is crucial for progressing in philosophical thought, according to Schopenhauer. Quote 28. Truly, it is the world itself that is a miracle, the world of material bodies. Schopenhauer marvels at the existence of the material world, calling it a miracle. This reflects his awe of the physical universe, which, despite being comprehensible through the laws of nature, retains a miraculous quality simply by virtue of existing. an existence that is all the more wondrous when considered through the lens of his philosophical musings about perception and reality. The Art of Controversy, by Arthur Schopenhauer, concludes by highlighting the tension between the desire to win arguments and the search for genuine understanding. Schopenhauer ultimately emphasizes that while these rhetorical tricks might lead to a superficial victory, they do not contribute to the advancement of knowledge or truth. Instead, the work serves as a cautionary reflection on the ways in which human vanity and ego interfere with meaningful discourse. Schopenhauer leaves the reader with the idea that true intellectual engagement should aim for insight and understanding, rather than mere dominance in debate.
Curious to dive into the mind of Arthur Schopenhauer? With StudyLab Prosebook GPT, it's possible. Ask questions, explore themes, and discover the depths of the art of controversy in an entirely new way. Start your conversation now by clicking on our logo. And if you're hungry for more educational content, subscribe to our channel to keep discovering, learning, and growing. Want more than just videos? Click on our logo now to join us on our platform for multiple choice tests, in-depth content, and tools to help you ace your studies. Get started now.